All right. We're diving deep today, folks, into some financial results.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, it is. We're looking at Waaree Renewables Technologies, LTD's Q2 financials,
Okay.
and, maybe just reading a financial report isn't everyone's idea of a good time.
Yeah.
But we're going to break it down.
Right.
See what it all means, what it tells us about Waaree, and what it might tell us about the whole renewable energy sector.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a snapshot of where they are right now in this really interesting market that's changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
We can look at the numbers, but it's also about understanding what's behind those numbers,
Right,
right?
exactly. So our main source today is Waree's official statement, which they release November 5th, 2024.
Okay.
And we've got both consolidated and standalone financials,
Right.
which means we see the whole group picture, with all their subsidiaries included.
Yeah, and that's particularly interesting, I think, now because they just recently merged several of their subsidiaries into the main company.
Oh.
Yeah, so you have to wonder, what's their long game? What are they thinking about in terms of growth?
Right, like what's the strategy behind that?
Yeah, are they consolidating to then expand in a different way?
Right, are they gearing up for something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Streamlining operations could mean they're getting ready to really take on some more ambitious projects.
Okay, interesting. So these financial statements were also reviewed by an independent auditor.
Right.
Now, what does that actually mean for someone like me who's, trying to wrap my head around these results?
Well, think of it like this. The auditor's job is to come in and double check everything, make sure all the numbers add up and that everything's been reported properly.
Okay, so they're like the referees of financial reporting.
Exactly. They make
Yeah.
sure everyone's playing by the rules.
Okay, got it. And in this case, they gave what's called an unmodified conclusion.
Right.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's definitely a good thing. It means the auditors are basically happy with how Waaree has presented their financials.
Okay.
They didn't find any red flags or anything that looks suspicious.
So that should give us some confidence in these numbers.
Exactly. It adds a layer of trust.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, I did notice something in the auditor's report.
Yeah.
It mentioned that one subsidiary's financials weren't even included in the review because they said it wasn't material to the group.
Right.
What does that mean?
That's a really interesting detail. It basically means that this particular subsidiary is pretty small
Okay.
compared to Waree's other operations.
Okay.
So small that its performance really wouldn't affect the group's overall financial picture in a significant way.
Okay, so it's like a little fish in a big pond.
Exactly. It's just not big enough to make a splash in the overall results.
So we're really looking at a company with a pretty diverse portfolio then.
Right.
Some parts of the business are clearly carrying a lot more weight than others.
Right. And that actually makes me think, how do they stack up against their competition?
Yeah. Where does Waaree fit in the bigger picture of the renewable energy market?
Right.
Especially with this whole subsidiary situation,
Yeah.
Like, how do all these pieces fit together into their overall performance?
Well, to really answer that, we need to look at the competitive landscape.
All right, let's do it. Let's see how they measure up against the other big players in the renewable energy world.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's talk competition.
The competition.
How's Waaree actually doing compared to like the other big names in renewable energy?
Well, to really compare apples to apples,
Yeah.
we need to dig into their competitors' financials, which we don't have right now.
Right.
But we could definitely look at some of the big picture trends in the market.
Yeah, I was going to say, even without seeing reports from other companies,
Right.
surely the market itself can give us some clues.
Absolutely. I mean, global trends impact every industry.
Yeah.
And renewable energy is definitely no exception.
For sure.
I mean, you think about things like government policies and incentives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those can really drive growth.
Right.
And we've seen a lot of countries pushing for clean energy,
Yeah.
which creates this really, supportive environment for companies like Waaree.
Right. And what about the cost of solar technology?
Oh, yeah?
I feel like I keep hearing about solar panels getting cheaper and cheaper.
You're absolutely right. That's a huge factor.
Okay.
The cost of solar has been steadily declining,
Yeah.
which makes it affordable for more people.
Right.
And that drives up demand,
Mm-hmm.
which is great news for the companies manufacturing those panels.
Okay. So that's one trend that could be working in their favor.
Definitely.
What else? What else should we be thinking about?
Well, advancements in battery technology are another big one.
Okay.
Being able to store energy efficiently is a game changer for renewables because it helps address that issue of solar and wind being intermittent.
Right, right.
They're not always available, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you can store that energy effectively,
Mm-hmm.
it makes the whole system a lot more reliable,
Right.
which is really key if we want to see more widespread adoption.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about the battery angle before.
Yeah, it's crucial.
So, do you think those trends like cheaper solar and better batteries, are those things reflected in Wary's performance, do you think?
Well, it's tough to say for sure without, more data,
Right.
but I have to imagine they're playing a role in Wary's strategic decisions.
Right.
I mean, any company in this space is going to be keeping a close eye on those trends
Uh-huh.
and adjusting their game plan accordingly.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Speaking of strategy, I know our listeners are really interested in sustainability.
Yeah.
So, what can you tell us about Wary's commitment to, to ESG practices?
That's a great question. ESG it's definitely becoming more and more important for investors.
Okay.
It's not just about profits anymore, right?
Right. Sure.
It's about making sure that those profits are generated responsibly
Yeah.
in a way that's good for the planet and for society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So companies really need to pay attention to their environmental impact,
Right.
their social impact,
Uh-huh.
and how they govern themselves.
Okay, so would you say that a company's ESG performance can actually influence investment decisions?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, investors are starting to realize that a company's ESG performance can have a real impact on its long-term value.
Mm.
They're looking for companies that align with their values.
Yeah.
And that includes, companies that are taking sustainability seriously.
So a good ESG score could actually give a company like Waaree a real competitive edge.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just about good PR anymore.
Right.
It's about attracting investors who are looking for companies that are doing the right thing.
So it's really becoming a core part of their value.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We had.
We've looked at Wary's financials,
Yeah.
talked about the competitive landscape,
Huh?
even delved into the world of ESG.
A lot to consider.
What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
Right. What does it all mean?
Yeah, what should they be thinking about when it comes to investing in, in renewable energy companies like Wary?
That's the key question,
Yeah.
and it's a perfect lead-in to our final thoughts on this deep dive.
Okay.
We'll wrap things up with some key insights and leave you with something to ponder.
Okay, so we've looked at how Wary's been doing, gotten a feel for the competition, and even touched on that whole ESG thing.
Right, ESG, yeah.
What's it all mean? Like, what's the big takeaway here? What should our listeners be thinking about?
I think if you zoom out and look at the big picture, right, the renewable energy sector is in this really interesting kind of a dynamic phase, I guess you can say.
Yeah, it feels like a turning point almost.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all these huge leaps in technology happening,
Right.
and then the markets are shifting, and investors are really starting to prioritize sustainability.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a really exciting time to be watching this space.
Yeah, for sure. So for anyone listening who's who's thinking about maybe investing in renewable energy companies like Wary,
Right.
what should they keep in mind? Like, what have we learned today that can help them out?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is don't just scratch the surface.
Okay.
Don't just look at the headlines, right?
Yeah.
Like really dig in and look at a company's overall strategy.
Okay.
Look at their ESG commitments.
Yeah.
How are they positioning themselves in the market? Like those are the details that can really tell you a lot.
And of course, don't just take our word for it.
Right. Exactly.
Do your own research. Look at Wary, look at their competitors.
Yep.
See how they stack up. Check out their track records.
Absolutely.
There's so much info out there.
There is.
So do your homework.
Yeah, and remember too, it's not just about the financial returns.
Right.
It's also about supporting a future that we can all feel good about.
That's a good point. All right. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Wary, what's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with? Like, what should they be thinking about as they learn more about this whole sector?
Here's a thought, right? As renewable energy grows, what role do you want to play in all this? Whether you're an investor or a consumer or just an informed citizen,
Right.
your choices matter.
That's true, yeah.
Every decision we make,
Uh-huh.
every dollar we spend,
Yeah.
it sends a signal to the market.
Right. And we can choose to support companies that that we believe in that align with our values.
That's exactly.
Well said. Well said. So, stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to ask those tough questions.
I love
That's
that.
how we build a better future, right?
Absolutely. Together.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.